So this particular location, this is the site up until August of 2020 of the Nada Carmelite Retreat Center. And this center was established in 1982, and I believe it was one of the earliest religious institutions that came here, and it was a retreat and contemplative center for people hosted by this Carmelite nuns, I guess. And so the women, it operated for 37 years, and then during 2020, the women, they'd gotten older and they wanted to move into their retirement, I guess. And so they passed the site along to, you can see the Center for Contemplative Research, Mio Samten Ling Hermitage. And so that happened in August of 2020. Now, this hermitage is affiliated with a new nonprofit here in Colorado called the Center of Contemplative Research, and it's affiliated with something called the Santa Barbara Institute on Consciousness. And the Santa Barbara Institute on Consciousness was established by an individual. His name is B. Alan Wallace, and he was the child of, I think, sort of conservative Baptist Christians, and he was really interested in the environment, and then eventually went on to study consciousness and meditation, Tibetan Buddhism specifically. And so the focus of the Center for Contemplative Research in Colorado, it is looking at the nature of consciousness from a scientific and non-materialist view. So increasingly, as this fourth industrial revolution rolls out and they're working to push us into their engineered holographic conception of reality, they're very interested in managing how our minds work and how they can engineer our consciousness. And it's from a very scientific standpoint. So they're looking, there have long been investigations into faith by scientists and by people who would like to use the power of very strong spiritual connections, whether that's Catholic, mystic, Tibetan meditation, other elements. They want to get a hold of that. They want to get a hold of that. And when I was over at the New Lane University site, I was talking about the global brain and Julius Stolman and Fritz Kunst and Pitcharim Sorobkin over at Harvard. Now, Fritz Kunst, who was part of this global brain project, he had been the head of theosophy in North America, but he had got his start working under Annie Besant in Adyar, India. And so there's quite a bit of Western insertion of Western science into the meditative practices of Buddhism in Tibet, in India, of trying to get a lock on what that is. And I believe, much of it is happening through the military and the CIA, and to try to leverage it into new markets. And I believe increasingly technologies connected to biofeedback mechanisms, which up until the point that they all became connected to the cloud and data-driven, certainly have some health benefits for people, but increasingly this concept of mindfulness, focused breathing, reducing your heart rate, they want to equip people with these tools because I believe that they understand that the world that they're building with these digital technologies is so profoundly inhuman that we will need tools to simply exist in the world that they're building, in this digital world that they're building. And they want to connect all of these devices through wearables, whether that's headsets, whether that's neural prosthetics, whether that's smart clothes, whether that's your Fitbit smartwatch, to mirror your biological process and your contemplative process into this digital reality, into the digitally twin universe, so that they can tweak it and engineer it as harmony, as peace. And so that's really this dark element of the Morris Strong interfaith program is, we will enact world peace not through individuals becoming more enlightened and agreeing to collaborate and heal the world and address systemic injustice and structural racism and environmental pollution, mostly by the military and corporate elements. They want to engineer us through our behaviors and controlling our minds and our thoughts. And that's how they're going to engineer world peace at the peace universities, to create these harmonies. But the harmonies are not harmonies of nature, not harmonies of wind to rock to trees, the harmonies that blow in the wind with the flags, the prayer flags. They will be harmonies that will be like electronic music, right? It will be a different thing. It will be a very different thing, and we will be drawn into it, most people not knowing the bigger picture and not being able to fully give our consent to where this is going. And I think particularly the resonance between the West and the East, that the West is looking to sort of insert itself into Eastern meditative practice, consciousness practice, not for the right ends. Maybe on the surface, some people have the right intention. I'm not saying the average regular person, but once you start it into wearables, into wellness metrics, into mirrored consciousness, into understanding the mind so that you can replicate it in a machine, that's all incredibly dangerous. So anyway, just behind me is the Nada Contemplative Center. So now it's this new consciousness center. B. Alan Wallace, who was with the Santa Barbara Institute on Consciousness, which is sort of the parent affiliate, he studied Tibetan Buddhism actually in the 1970s, and he studied it at the University of Göttingen, which is interesting, in Germany. And that university was set up by George II, the King of England, to establish enlightened thinking in Germany, which is quite an interesting concept. And now that university actually maintains affiliations with the Max Planck Institute and the Leibniz Institute. So he studied Tibetan Buddhism. He initially started out at UC San Diego, which, as we know, is a center for a lot of the nanotech. Went on to Göttingen, and then was actually ordained as a monk by the Dalai Lama in Dharamsala in 1975. And so there's this resonance with the Dalai Lama, who is very clearly, you know, a prominent figure in public consciousness, very connected in with celebrity, with the World Economic Forum, with Ervin Laszlo, the systems theorist, with his Club of Budapest. He's an honorary member. The idea of, you know, being in exile and representing the people of Tibet, but from a modern worldview, embracing the scientific pursuit, almost to the extent of suppressing some of the original teachings, moving in a modern direction, in a globalist direction, would be very much in line with the harmonized, holographic world that we're moving into. And so, you know, I just want to mention that within the context of the conference itself, because when we were at the Brigham Academy at the Mormon Transhumanist Conference last Saturday, we had one of the presenters was very into meditative practice, and you know, he's a member of the church, so clearly that's not his original cultural practice, but he gave a presentation about religion as an API, religion as an app of something that you could mix and match, syncretism, and that you could just have a app. Like you could be atheist, but you could just use a Buddhist meditative app and then collect that data, and that would be fine. And he was very focused on children. And right now, what I saw, even when my child was finishing up school, there was quite a pressure on them to practice mindfulness. And it was one of these companies that is connected to it is called I Heart Math. And it's biofeedback and slowing your heart and being focused, all of which on the surface is fine. But once you connect it to the cloud, once you create digital identities, once you create digital twins that you're trying to understand how minds work individually and collectively, and you make impact markets on that, and you're engineering people's consciousness in ways they may not fully comprehend, using children in schools as test beds is really scary. And, you know, my question has always been, why do we want to give children tools to live in a world where there's such stress and pressure that they can't even be children? Why do we not try to address the structural problem and make a world that's kind to children? Like, why should we make worlds that are terrible for children and then equip them with yoga and mindfulness exercises and wearable technology and say, we're going to measure how good you are to fit into this broken society? I mean, that's a sickness. That is a soul sickness. And, you know, many of the impact markets are connected to these wearables, connected to consciousness, including Paul Tudor Jones of the Robin Hood Foundation, who was a gentleman I was researching early on. His wife, Sonia Jones, is a wellness yoga practitioner. And he, Paul Tudor Jones and his wife, endowed a whole research center on sort of contemplation, contemplative sciences at the University of Virginia, which is his alma mater. And so all of these things are just emerging. If you just look around, you see it everywhere. Social emotional learning, mindfulness, yoga for children. But again, to what end? I don't have anything against the practice of meditation, the practice of yoga, the cultural context of it. I fully believe that in this moment of facing down artificial intelligence, all of us who have a connection to the sacred, it is our responsibility to ground into that authentic cultural practice and try to be as human as possible and to try to have as much integrity as possible. I'm not pitting religions against one another because that's what they want us to do. They want us to be fragmented. We need to be connected to our faith and to that energetic position, but not from some preconceived United Nations Sustainable Development Goals, not rules given to us by some oil mining, water stealing billionaire or the people who would create, nanotechnology medicine to turn us into holographic beings. That's not it. But all of us need to tap into that with the understanding, and I will say this, and this is work that I've been doing, the whole interfaith unity is unfortunately all part of it. So how can you go about wanting peace and love and nature and then realize they've attempted to co-opt all of the language and all of the organizations around it already? But I fully believe that interfaith NGOs that are specifically funded by these billionaire impact investors to create interfaith alliances within certain parameters, that's being done on purpose because they don't want the sort of beautiful chaos of real human beings and connected with their creators in a sacred space. They don't want that. They want to have it all very well managed. And so the interfaith networks do that, and I've seen that in my own community in Philadelphia. I didn't understand it at the time, but I saw that the Gates Foundation had been funding interfaith organizations for a very long time, and in our state, in Pennsylvania, it was called Power, which is interesting because so much of this does have to do with energy and frequency and power. And so this interfaith alliance, Christians, people of the Jewish faith, Muslims, they were all working together on certain key issues, but only with a very, very narrow focus, and they were meant to be kept busy on those things, like a fight for 15 wage or funding for public education, but very, very narrow, and they would not ever look expansively. And I think that was very much on purpose. And I think ultimately, it's order from chaos, that their plan will be to create chaos. Whether it's actually real chaos or not is hard to tell in this world of CGI and propaganda, but create chaos for a certain amount of time, dispossess people, and then bring them together under this cybernetic smart city, a digital citizen, universal basic income, wearable technology, teach the artificial intelligence, and pursue your spiritual practice, but under the watch of these digital systems so that we can manage your consciousness and get what we need for our artificial intelligence program. And then that's what it's about. And I have some concerns, and I'm going to be publishing this in a paper shortly, hopefully, but that I feel extremely, my sense is, my intuition is telling me that the Baha'i faith is going to be that umbrella organization for the ultimate interfaith, because Ernest Laszlo, the systems theorist, is sort of affiliated with them, and he said, you guys, your faith connects science and religion. It's logic. It's religion of logic and science, and it is a unity and harmony are the principles that are espoused. And so they would allow all of the individual faiths, like this assortment all over the mountain, to do their own thing, but with under an umbrella of cybernetic consciousness control. And so I think we need to be very cautious about that. Not of individual faith practitioners, but of institutions broadly. So I guess I'm just going to close. Hopefully we're going to find a place to leave a few intentional tokens of our desire to pursue a path of authentic healing from a sacred spiritual place, but not on the blockchain and not tied to social impact markets, and to resonate with the beautiful space that this is, because I do believe that they knew that this is an important space and that they're trying to pull off this energy and misdirect it. But all of the corporate environmentalism that is represented by Morris Strong, you know, it is the extension of blockchain, putting sensors on every tree, putting smart dust on all of the sage, and running it through these global markets. And my deep concern is that indigenous communities around the world have been led down a path by the Rockefeller United Nations to start to establish legal precedents for the rights of nature, which on the surface doesn't seem like a bad idea if you believed in the legal system in the first place, which I don't believe the legal system is set up to protect nature. And I think really they will look to put nature on blockchain to make a river a corporation, to make a mountain a corporation, and then to use automated smart contract laws under the guise of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals to douse it all in electronic frequency and disrupt all of the beingness of all of the insects and the fish and the animals under the guise of care and legal protection, and then to use that to further dispossess whatever rights the original indigenous people had to their sacred lands in that way. And so, you know, I'm just saying a cautionary tale because I do believe the role will be to blockchain nature as corporations and to suck it into the capitalist cybernetic construct, and then you know, commandeer all of that as well as consciousness. So anyway, it's a pretty amazing space to try to tell some of these stories, and I hope it makes sense to you.